And obviously right now at PEXA, it's really giving you, I know I talk about it a lot. I can just feel that energy coming from you when you talk about this new role. You have an opportunity to really build a new business. It's very agile. You're starting from the ground up. It's not really sales per se because you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with product. To me, it sounds like a fantastic opportunity that you got ahead of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. It's one of those things where I was looking around for a while. I'm a big fan of real estate. I love real estate. I'm an investor in real estate. I think most Australians want to be in real estate or are in real estate.
It always goes up.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. We'll see. This will be the first time interest rates are starting to move up in what is it, 10 years. So it'll be interesting to see, people who bought houses the last 10 years will start to feel the pinch as interest rates go up. But, it has a tendency to move up. And I think a couple of reasons we're quite lucky here in Australia. The building industry can't build enough housing or dwellings. And number two, we've got good immigration policies which allow, people from overseas to come into Australia. That drives demand for housing as well. So for me, that's a real plus, and I think it's a good upside. Very similar to our share market, right? With superannuation, everybody's putting that 9.5% or 10% away.
It's huge,
and it's just traditionally gone into the share market. So if you're buying the index, it's bound to go up because money just keeps going in there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, so you're right. So for me, that's one driver. Love real estate. PEXA is effectively the stock exchange for real estate. They're looking to broaden the competitiveness within the industry, but right now, PEXA is the main player within e-commerce, e-conveyancing and settlements.
Fantastic. And if you don't mind, tell us a bit more about the role. I do love the aspect how you're sort of building it as well. It doesn't sound like a typical, here's a sales role, hit that target, away you go.
No, so when I first spoke to my manager about the role, he'd been in the business for probably just over 6 months, maybe 9, and he was tasked with building out the sales team. But the reality is that there's no product that's been finalised yet in the sort of the part of business that I'm in, which is effectively a startup within a listed entity. And they realised they've got this huge data set available to them, which they can use to actually go and do good in the community by giving insights to people, businesses, to create better customer experiences, better experiences for consumers overall. And so part of that journey for the last 2.5 years for them has been to develop and come up with ideas that they can take to market as a product and then obviously make a difference. So when I was speaking to my manager, he was saying, well, look, this role is not just a sales role, it's a discovery role, it's a relationship role, it's you're building out the network, you get to understand what the clients need or potential clients need and how they want to act and what they need in order to make their businesses better and their customer experiences better. So that's what we're really focused on, which is quite exciting, right? It's not often you get to be part of a company that's looking to do something good socially and expand it to the point where they're trying to help other companies do good socially.
It's a great mixing role, isn't it?
Very much so.
And obviously, throughout your conversations with these customers, has there been a use case that's really been quite interesting for you and quite profound? Obviously, if you're willing to share, I understand that these things are quite early. Has there been a customer that's really gone to you, hey, you know what, that's actually, it's a pretty good problem to have, so to speak, and here's a potential solution I can offer you?
Yeah, I guess in a sense, one thing that really surprised me was one company that I met with, and I won't go into details because you don't want to sort of share that, but it was interesting to see that there were a global entity that didn't really have a policy around what we were trying to sell them, and that was a certain customer experience.
Okay, wow.
And they had a loose idea that they wanted to do something in this area, but they weren't really doing anything. So even though our product, they loved it and they were very keen to get involved with it, Jeff, they just weren't ready to buy, because even if we gave it to them, like what they said is, we don't have the bandwidth, the manpower, or the sort of framework for us to deliver or use this in any way. Which is a good thing, right? Because it shows the company's kind of, PEXA is thinking ahead of its time in terms of being a thought leader, but also looking for insights that can help clients themselves do better for their clients.
And just confirming, PEXA is like what you said, the stock exchange equivalent for property. But to be more specific, it's pretty much settlement data. Is that correct? Contract and settlement data?
Yeah, so contract and settlement data. So we work with the likes of the Land Titles Office. So, you know, there's always four parties to a transaction. So there's the buyer, the seller. They're represented by their respective lawyers. And then they also have their financial institutions that they use. The lawyers or the conveyancers all plug into the PEXA platform, as do the financial institutions. And on settlement, when all the documents and everything is loaded and it's been ticked off and verified, what happens is that PEXA Exchange pushes a button, and then the two just auto settle. And so the buyer gets their name onto the land titles straight away on the title deed for the property. And their account is directly debited, and those funds are forwarded to the seller or the vendor straight away. So there's a huge reduction time in settlement. There's no longer a 6-week period waiting on checks to clear. There's also no longer I think it was something like 6 weeks it used to take before the incoming bank was registered on the mortgage, as well as the new owner.
Interesting, buddy. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, that's obviously, that's a limited potential fraud gaps. That, you know, in the past there's been instances where somebody sold a property and then very quickly turned around and sold it again because they were still the registered person on the land titles. And so it could leave banks and buyers exposed for a little while. Now, that wasn't something that happened often, Jeff, but it has happened, right?
Yeah, if there's any sort of latency issue in terms of a gap, someone's going to exploit it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, most people don't, but there is always that. It always happens every now and then that somebody works out that they can do that. And the other thing also is it means that the correct data is going on the title deeds now. Previously, there could have been spelling mistakes and other mistakes that happens, right? So
good old human error.
That's right. So that's kind of been eliminated. But for me also, when you think about it, and I hadn't thought about this till just recently when I'm inside of PEXA, if you think about the amount of paper and reduced travel there is as a result of doing e-conveyancing, so everything's electronically done. You know, the lawyer, the banker still travels to their office, but when I first started in financial markets, this is a good 22 years ago, my first role was to work as part of CBA business banking, was to take the checks down to go to settlement. And then you're standing down there and you're yelling out, yeah, you're Smith Settlement, and you find the right lawyer and you connect and you go through and you go, right, I've got these checks here and this is the list, yeah, it looks right, and you swap. But sometimes you didn't have the right check, or the amount was off, or even if it was off by $1, right, you kind of delay settlement. So yeah, then there's a delay in settlement. And to me, that means, you know, you've saved incredible amounts of people traveling, paper. So overall, it's also a very greenhouse gas friendly business.
Yeah, because if everything's happening electronically, you know, it's real time, it minimizes human error, it's instantaneous, it reduces fraud. There are huge benefits as opposed to sort of a paper trail, so to speak. So just getting back to that organization, Ronnie, that was actually quite interesting. So they were interested, but they didn't have the policy framework to initiate a potential solution. Could you also argue that maybe it wasn't a priority for them, maybe, or was it that forward thinking, so to speak, in terms of the potential idea?
Well, the idea was initially it was mandated by government, right? So COAG,
Mm,
and they basically came out. Now I can't remember what that acronym stands for. As you know, corporate loves acronyms, but COAG essentially is the joint sort of government saying, for the state government saying, hey, we need a solution to this. We can't keep doing um, paper-based conveyancing, and we want to make it electronic because it makes sense. Now, Australia is the first country in the world to have electronic settlement for property.
wow,
Um,
really?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay, didn't know that.
yeah, absolutely. We're currently trying to set up in England. So there's some countries in the world that are really suited to this, generally within the sort of British Empire, so to speak. Like if you think where the British have been, that's probably good, suitable countries um, for the likes of
Because they can sort of make that migration from paper-based to electronic, but obviously keep the same process.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
So that's kind of things that are happening. So that's quite exciting. But it also means that as you start to spread out through the world and you can reduce this reliance on paper, you're helping forests, you're saving trees, and you're saving greenhouse gas emissions. So um, PEXA is sort of looking to be carbon net neutral by 2025.
It makes perfect sense. Wow, I
Mm,
agree. Didn't really. I know we had a chat before about it, but now I get it even more.
yeah, yeah. So it's pretty cool.
And if you've got providers like RP Data and sort of, I think CoreLogic, I'm not too sure, the same organization, would they provide somewhat similar information in terms of that type of data? And would they be a competitor of sorts, or is this very much focusing on sort of solicitors slash conveyancers who would leverage the system? Or I'm sort of curious to see where would you potentially pitch the end solution?
Yeah. So the end solution is geared towards conveyancers and lawyers and banking institutions, right?
Mm,
The likes of, I guess, Domain and CoreLogic, they're parallel competitors in a sense that they don't compete with what we do because they don't do e-conveyancing. But obviously they have a lot of property data. So they're sort of further along and earlier in the supply chain.
interesting.
Um, PEXA comes in at the point where there's the exchange of contracts and then the exchange of funds to facilitate the purchase and transfer of property, which is pretty cool. The real estate agents do a lot of work beforehand, and they would be
Mm,
in constant contact with the likes of CoreLogic, Domain, and then post settlement when the known post sale or auction, that's when Domain and CoreLogic still talk to the real estate agents. Post settlement, I guess, Domain and CoreLogic may do some work, but I think it's most of their work happens pre, and maybe also around valuations, right? They may look at valuation data and things like that. You can look up your property and go, hey, it's now worth X amount of dollars. Hopefully that number always gets bigger and not smaller. But
like what you said, potential rates coming soon. We don't really know that, but I see what you mean when it's quite complementary.
yeah,
And in a way, it's actually a very unique data set, which is somewhat of a monopoly. I don't say it in a negative way. I say it in a way where PEXA is essentially capturing all that data, and it's very powerful.
yeah. I mean, look, you can get that data from the land titles office, so it's available there. And I mean, it's a monopoly in the sense that you call the stock exchange a monopoly, right? I don't know if you would say that they're
True.
necessarily
Good point.
they're a monopoly, but sometimes you need a sole provider to make sure that it's efficient and streamlined. The whole idea behind PEXA was created was as I said by a sort of the state governments wanting to improve on the e-conveyancing and make it better.
Mm,
So the stock exchange was created to make sure that settlements of shares were happening in real time and were done at arm's length and in a regulated manner. So I guess that's what PEX is doing, right?
Interesting, interesting. Don't mind me. I just it's as I understand it even more, it's actually quite a very interesting offering. And just getting back to the role,
Mm.
it meeting a lot of people, it's a bit of sales, a bit of relationship building. It's a huge difference from financial markets. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
there is elements to it which are quite similar on terms of financing, so to speak. Um, but I can see the role being something that's very fruitful going forward.
Yeah, for me, Jeff, the exciting part is being part of, being in a startup which has got, basically a really strong runway. It's got good financial backing, and you've got the potential to make a difference in the world. I think most startups kind of fall within that category. The advantage we have is that we've got a strong runway. Like, we've got strong support by a parent company that we're part of.
It's sort of de-risked in a way.
Yeah, a little bit, because you don't need to worry about whether we're going to get paid this month, or whether we get the product to 90% and then we run out of funding, right? Like,
Because you've
that's
got
where
that strong backing.
it's very, like, we're very lucky, right? But at the same time, the company's also realized that once it's got, let's say, gets to 100% of full conveyancing,
Mm.
then it can't grow anymore. It's reliant on growth from, more properties being sold.
Essentially,
Well,
hey.
so you got to expand the product offering, and what the only way you can do that is leveraging what you have in your sort of war chest. And what's in your war chest is data.
It is, hey. I know we talked about if we split up the role in terms of you being in a startup, I'm very curious to dig a bit deeper on the whole sort of social aspect. I know being in foreign exchange, financial markets for the past 20 years, there's always a bit of a repeat on, which I think is very fascinating, about just doing something for the good.
Mm.
Has that also been a key driver for you to make a switch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, I've always been interested in having my own business, Jeff. That's and I've always got some kind of side hustle going on the side, or trying to start a side hustle of some sort. Because I think it's important to keep your mind ticking over, but also, you never know, you might come up with a great idea that just works, right? But for me, to be able to actually do some good by being in an organisation like that, that's not to say that I wasn't doing good before in financial markets. You absolutely are. I think for me, the difference is, financial markets, it's uber competitive. It's always about making that next sale, making sure that the clients are well looked after, serviced, that you're helping them achieve best possible outcomes whilst also making money. Don't get me wrong, Pixel makes money, but it's also about, it feels like it's very socially conscious. It's a very mature culture, even though it's a young company. And it's very focused on making sure that it's inclusive, it's open to ideas and innovation, where sometimes I felt like, I don't know about you with your background in financial markets, but sometimes I felt like financial markets, they wanted innovation, but not too quickly and not too fast. That's something that I found, yeah.
Is that a nature of the larger organization you were with?
No, because I mean, I've been at, I've been at large, two of the major banks. I've been at large international organisations, and then I've been at a smaller boutique kind of organisation. And even there, it was profit driven, right? And again, it's not a bad thing, because you're helping the client, you're making a difference in their lives.
You're trying to go for win-win at the end of the day, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I think most people do look for the win-win. But here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to understand problems within the industry, how we can solve them with what data we have, and how that then can make a positive impact not only on the immediate customer, but their end customer down the road, so the consumer. And for me, that's pretty cool, right? If you
it's very direct. It seems to me that whatever you do, you can directly attribute that to an end result, which is for the better.
Yeah, I feel that's the difference between financial markets and being at PEXA. But I also get the sense,
Matty.
yeah, Jeff, I also get the sense that speaking to other tech companies and tech owners, that is a similar kind of feeling. Like you are actually you feel like you're making a difference. Maybe it's because it's a newer industry and there's still so much innovation that's happening compared to um, financial markets and other areas like that that are traditionally well developed, well known, well understood, to the point that things kind of have a rhythm and a process that gets followed.
You make a very good point there. I'm curious to get your thoughts here because we could branch off to an entirely different topic here, right? Why do you think people want to do something that contributes to the good? I'm noticing that a bit more and more. I'm not too sure if you're sensing the same thing from your network. I don't know whether it's the nature of the fact that we're a bit developed in the years, so to speak. We've been around the top from some time before, and maybe now we know what we want. Is it the nature of the environment where people are realizing maybe I can align doing something good whilst also looking after my family? What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think you hit the nail on the head when you first sort of mentioned it. I do think getting older, you start to think about different ways.
Mm,
Um, I you know, I often speak to my dad about different things, and one of the things we often talk about is how you start out life. I feel I don't know if this is true or if it's validated. I haven't done any surveys, but
yeah.
I feel like you start out life being a socialist, uh, and then people get this idea that actually no, hang on, I need to make some money to become a capitalist, and then as you get older, you start to go back to socialism because you kind of feel like you've done well, and you know for whatever your measure of doing well is, you've done well, and so you start to go back to socialism, and whether that's giving back or having a look at something that's fair and equitable for everybody. I think that's a strong thing that comes out. Whether that's that's probably a generalization, Jeff. I don't know if it's true for everyone, but that's certainly how I feel sometimes.
I reckon that's pretty much bang on the money. By all means, there are people out there where they do see the dollar sign as their God. That's okay, each to their own. Getting back to your point about startups believing that they can create something for the better, I suppose in a way, that's why I'm doing this in a way.
Yeah,
Just
nice.
just an opportunity that I believe can make the world better.
Yeah, I like that.
Um,
You're sharing.
yeah, and I think with the nature of roles nowadays, I think the variability excites me too. And getting back to your point about, you sort of you grow up, become a socialist, but then you realize is that if you really want to make change, it needs to be backed up by a big purse. But then you might flip back into being that sort of how can I give back? Perhaps that's very much the nature of how things are nowadays. I'm not too sure.
Maybe I don't know that. I wouldn't know whether that's true or not. But the more, and maybe it's just because of the life stage we're in, Jeff.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Look, and I'm sure there's people in our age who, really still trying to make it. I'm not saying that I've made it by any means, believe me, but I definitely think there's people who are worse off, and there's many people who are better off than I am. But I think I'm comfortable with where I am. But maybe that's the other thing. Maybe it's because you become comfortable